meditation is considered an evidence-based form of treatment. That means that insurance will pay for meditation training as a form of psychotherapy. And if you practice meditation consistently every single day, you will be involved in a psychotherapeutic process. What do I mean by that? I mean that you will be involved in a process that will change your personality, change your thinking, change your emotions, and change your behavior. That makes it psychotherapeutic. How does that work? Well, it works simply because you're developing your ability to pay attention, you're developing your ability to relax the physical body, you're developing your ability to calm your mind, and in that state of being that meditation's a state of being. In that state of being, you're able to be a witness to your internal life. You're able to be a witness to your thought activity, you're able to be a witness to your emotions, to your behavior, to your physical sensations. And this ability to be a witness in real time to what's happening in your psyche, in your psychological experience, is psychotherapeutic. Why? Because if you're paying attention and you see that the thoughts you're having are crazy, right, you don't act them out, right? That's a successful psychotherapeutic intervention. You don't act them out. Most of the time, we act out our thoughts because they're driven by strong emotion, especially anger. They're driven by emotion, or fear, anger or fear, right? They're driven by emotion. And when we're in the state of anger or fear, we're sleeping. We're not aware of the fact that the emotion is controlling you 100%. In fact, your thoughts align themselves with the emotion. If you're angry, you have angry thoughts, and that justifies what you're going to do next, even though you're really not present. And then you do what your thoughts and your feelings tell you to do, and after you calm down, you look back and say, oh shit, what did I do? What did I say? And then you feel guilty about it, and then you beat yourself up, and that starts the whole cycle all over again, because now you're disempowered, right? You think of yourself in negative terms. So this whole process of failure, it's a failed way to live. This whole process of failure ends people up in depression because they feel hopeless. You know, I feel hopeless. I've been married, 3 times, 4 times, and still's not working, or I've been trying to control my eating patterns for years. It's still not working. I've been trying to get to the gym. It's still not working. Been trying to be happy. Still not working. Trying to be peaceful. Still not working. Trying to be satisfied. Still not working. So meditation gives us a reason to pay attention so that we can see that life, the way we're living it in the condition we're in, is a dysfunctional reality. It's a failed endeavor. It doesn't work. To live your life in a state of mind does not work. And now we know one of the reasons that meditation is considered a evidence-based treatment is because there's been research done by brain scientists, by neuroscientists, that tell us that your brain is plastic. Your brain is, your brain is changing all the time. Neuroplasticity. It's relatively new on the scene. It's about 20 years old now, but that's new on the scene, understanding that the brain's changing all the time. And with that being the case, researchers started to do research on experienced meditators, people who have been meditating for decades. They put them in brain scans, and they discovered that their brains were significantly different than other people's brains, and the way their brains worked was significantly different than other people's brains. And the studies indicated how was their brain different? They were much more resilient, meaning that they recovered much more quickly from upsets, from disturbances. They were much more resilient. They were much more effective in the way they lived their life. They didn't get angry a lot, they weren't blowing off steam all the time, They weren't suffering from constant anxiety. They were healthier physically than other people were. They weren't suffering from fear. They were able to be at peace and be relaxed in their life. Sounds like an ideal existence, right? And so brain scientists have discovered that Richie Davidson, he's one of the most well-known brain scientists that did a lot of this research with the Dalai Lama and with monks. And what he concluded in his research and in the literature that he wrote after the research is that if the brain is plastic, if neuroplasticity is the case, and if meditation changes the brain, and if the brain changes, our behavior changes, our personality changes, the way we feel changes, the way we think changes, the quality of our life changes. If all that's true by changing the brain, and if meditation is a practice that can accomplish that, then well-being is a practice. That was his conclusion. Your well-being is a practice. You can practice your way out of being neurotic. You can practice your way out of being depressed. You can practice your way out of being anxious. And you can practice your way into being present to your life in such a way where you'll actually see what's really going on instead of what you think about it and how you feel about it. And because you see what's actually going on, you can respond to it instead of react to it. That's responsibility instead of reacting. And when you live your life that way, when you're more present, when you're more awake, when you're able to experience a better quality of existence, you're happier and your life works. That's a fix. That's a fix for the failure. This is the reason why in my private practice as a psychologist, I include meditation whenever possible, because it's been my personal experience as a human being, right? I mean, I got involved in psychology when I was a young man because I came from a disastrous family. This is not that uncommon these days. Came from a neurotic, crazy family, right? And I didn't want to turn out like my brothers and sister, who were an example of what happens when you're raised by a crazy family, right? So I was committed not to turn out like that, and so I got involved in psychology very early in my life, and I became a psychologist, and I was practicing conventional forms of psychology, working with people's thinking, working with people's addictions, working with people to manage their emotions and so forth. That's the conventional stuff that psychologists do. And I found it to be very frustrating because I got into this hoping that it would fix my psyche, not just the other people's psyche that I work with, and it wasn't doing that. So it was a situation that I was uncomfortable with. I was in a profession in which the idea of the work was to help other people be sane and function and be happy and satisfied. And yet the tools that I had to do that were very limited and really didn't work very well. And they didn't work very well on me. I mean, one of the things that I did when I was a young therapist, a young psychologist, is I found the best therapist I could find, and I went and put myself in their therapy, figuring maybe I just don't know what I'm doing, right? But I found out from the experience being in their therapy, there wasn't any better than what I was doing. It didn't really make much of a difference. And I was interested in meditation, and I had touched, as a lot of people do, they practice it a little bit, they try it here and there, but they really don't establish a consistent practice. And so it didn't occur to me to be much better than anything else. But then I started to study some of the Eastern teachings in Buddhism and Taoism and Hinduism and Sufism. And I started to realize that these teachings were saying, no, meditation does work. It comes from hundreds and hundreds of years ago as a practice that if you do it the way it's meant to be done and you do it consistently, it does work. So I took heed to that and made a committed attempt to establish a meditation practice that I did every single day without fail, and did it the way it was really meant to be done, and did it along with studying the fundamental teachings that went along with it from the East. Then I started to experience dramatic differences in my psyche. I started to experience spontaneous happiness. I started to experience being awake and seeing where I was making mistakes in my relationships in my life. And because I was awake and seeing it now, I stopped making those mistakes. Started being more effective in living my life. So in all the areas that mattered in my life in terms of well-being, meditation had transformed my experience of my life. It made it possible for me to transcend the limited state of existence that my thought activity was giving me to live in. And once that clicked for me and I realized this possibility, then I started to become more serious in learning more about it and teaching it to other people. And so that was 50 years ago. And so I've been practicing ever since and learning ever since, and I'm still practicing and still learning because it's a never-ending process. To learn about the truth, which is what you end up doing when you practice meditation, is a never-ending process because the truth is an infinite reality. It's an infinite reality. It's an amazing experience to come into contact with the truth, with the infinite reality that is the truth. So the practice of meditation is something that if you begin to do it, you have to understand that in the beginning, you're practicing meditation, you are not meditating. You're practicing meditation, you are not meditating. That's why a lot of people quit in the beginning stages of meditation, because you're putting up with your mind, you're putting up with being restless, you're putting up with having thoughts and having feelings about this, that this doesn't seem like it's going anywhere. See, we live in such a neurotic, unrealistic state these days, right? That anything that you're given as an answer to your problems is something that can help you feel better and live a better life. Anything you're given to do that, if it doesn't deliver right away, you move on. That's the world we're living in, right? Because we live in a world where everybody expects things to happen right away. Everybody wants an Amazon life, right? Everybody expects things to happen, you know, get delivery within 24 hours. I want my meditation practice to deliver within 24 hours too, like Amazon does. And we're spoiled brats, right? Because we believe that we can get what we want pretty quickly, right? And so therefore I expect it to come very quickly. And if it doesn't come very quickly, then I am annoyed with that. Then I look for a better delivery system, you see what I'm saying? So meditation doesn't work like Amazon. Meditation works, but it only works if you practice it consistently over time, because you have been hypnotized into a state of mind that's not easy to come out of. You've been hypnotized into a state of mind where you believe that the voice in your head is you. That's the beginning of a tragedy. You believe the voice in your head is you. It's not that it's never you, right? See, the thing that makes this complicated and confusing is you might say, well, what do you mean the voice in my head is not me? I can think. It's true that you can think. If I ask you to think about the weather today, you can generate thoughts about the weather. You can do that, right? And you do generate thoughts in your life as you do the work that you do. When you're paying attention to doing your job, you're consciously, intentionally thinking in order to produce results. So you do that. Here's the problem. If you started to really pay attention, you would start to notice that when you're not doing that, the voice in your head doesn't stop. When you're not actively causing the thoughts to happen, the thoughts continue. The voice in your head continues to talk, right? And it continues to do that a large percentage of the time. The brain scientists call this the default state. When you're not consciously and intentionally thinking, the voice continues to think. And if you start to pay attention to this default state, you realize this is the source of suffering. This default state is the source of suffering. What do I mean by that? The voice in your head is describing a world to you as you live your life, right? That's a negative world. It's a threatening world. It's a confusing world. It's a difficult world. It's an uphill battle. Right? This is the world that your thought activity is describing to you, because your thought activity comes from your conditioning, and your conditioning has been traumatized. Your brain's been traumatized. So this thinking activity comes from the conditioning. It's fear-based. Right? It's egocentric. It means that you're the center of the universe. Everything depends on, you know, how I feel and what I think and what I want, right? This is insanity. And yet the voice in your head does that. And because most people don't know it's not them, because most people don't know the voice in the head is not them, they let it drive them crazy and then blame themselves for it because they think that they were the voice. You see the problem? They let it drive them crazy, right? So there's a way out of that, and the way out of that is to stop being involved with the default state, to pay attention in such a way where you're aware when that voice is off the rails, when that voice is talking negative about you, when that voice is describing a threatening world, when that voice is describing situations that you have in your life, as problems, right? So you're living in this problematic thought world all the time. If you start to wake up from that and start to be able to see that in real time and understand that the way out of that is to withdraw your involvement, withdraw your attention from that thought activity. If you withdraw your attention from that thinking process, the thinking process starts losing its ability to continue because the energy that it needs to think is given to you by your attention. The energy that it needs to think is given to it by your attention. So if you start to withdraw your attention, withdraw that energy from the thinking activity starts to die down, starts to calm down. This happens over time through practicing meditation, but it requires commitment, dedication, diligence. It requires strong determination because the system is not set up for meditation. Your brain is not set up for meditation. That's why when you go to meditate, your body gets restless, the thinking activity is going, it keeps trying to pull your attention back into it, right? Because the way the brain is set up, the way your nervous system is set up, if you stop thinking, you'll die. That's how the system is set up. If you stop thinking, you'll die. So if you move your attention away from the thinking activity when you're practicing meditation, the body starts getting restless. You start. How much time has passed? How much time has passed? What's going on? Is this okay? Am I doing it right? All of these things start to happen when you're practicing meditation in the beginning, but you're not meditating yet, you're just trying to meditate. You're doing the technique, but you're not meditating yet, you're just trying to meditate. This is important for you to understand. If you were going to learn how to play the piano, you would not think that you could go to the piano and the piano teacher would say, these are the home keys, put your hands there, now here's a sheet of music, play some songs. That's not going to happen, right? So anybody that teaches musical instruments will tell you in the beginning you have to put up with doing the drills. You have to put up with doing the tedious, repetitive thing that you don't feel like doing. And if you continue to do that over and over and over again, the day will come where I will say to you, okay, start playing these notes specifically, and then you're moving into music. The same thing is true with meditation. In the beginning, you've got to deal with the fact that you will not experience meditation for a while. The experience of meditation is the experience of awareness itself, the experience of being. It's a state of being, not a state of thinking. It's a state of being, not a state of mind. Right? But you're so hypnotized to be in a state of mind that it takes a while for you to gradually come out of that condition. And during that time, you need to be studying the teachings that are the foundation for the practice so you understand what you're doing and how important it is. And you understand that unless you have the determination necessary and the conviction and the commitment necessary to continue to do it day after day after day, it won't work. But if you do maintain the conviction and the determination, and if you do study the teachings, that will motivate you to continue to do it because it will deepen your understanding of what you're practicing, right? If you do that, gradually over time, you'll start to experience meditation. What will that be like? You'll start to experience this sense of well-being. You could call it calmness. You could call it clarity. You could call it a sense of just feeling peaceful, feeling happy, feeling fulfilled. And it could be even confusing to people who are unfamiliar with the natural state because they might think, well, I didn't do anything to get this. I didn't buy anything on Amazon to get this. I didn't get a new lover to get this. I didn't buy a new car to get this. This is interesting. I can just feel these things. I can just experience well-being, without getting what I want. The way most people think that you have to get well-being and be happy is to get what you want, isn't it? Get what you want. That's why the back of the Amazon truck says, you know, what you want is here. It's on the back of the Amazon truck. What you want is here, right? Don't believe that, because it's what you want is here. As soon as you get that, the next thing you want is here. And it doesn't stop, right? So in meditation, I can say to you that what you want is here, and it is true. It's actually true. But it's not an Amazon situation. You're going to have to deliver what it takes over time consistently in order for the result to be produced. Right? So it's going to take a commitment. It's going to take a teacher, because if you don't have somebody to guide you, you know, once your mind starts to take over and tell you this isn't for you, you're too busy, you're too tired, you know, this is a cult, you know, whatever it is, you know, the mind knows just what to tell you to get you to do it at once, right? Because it knows all your information. It's got access to your data, right? Right? So your mind can talk you in and out of anything, and it can talk you out of meditation. So you need a teaching and a teacher. You know, in the East, they call it the 3 gems: the teacher, the teaching, and the practice. The teacher, the teaching, and the community. Those 3 things together empower you to develop a meditation practice and maintain it consistently. And once you do that after a while and you're part of a community, even in this class, since I've been teaching this class, which is going on about 9 years now, a group of people who have been coming to the class have caught on to what this is all about, and they come to the class very consistently, very consistently. And the reason they do that is because by doing it consistently, they started to experience meditation. They started to experience what this really is, right? And once you experience what this really is, then you get the bug. Then you get the meditation bug, and then you want to meditate, right? And you might even go to meditation retreats, right? I'm going to one next Thursday. So the next Thursday class and the next Sunday class will be canceled, because I'll be with my teacher practicing meditation about 8 or 9 times a day for 7 days without talking, right? Why? Why would anybody do that, right? Why would anybody go to the dentist? Why would anybody get brain surgery, you know? Because you want health and well-being, and you're willing to put yourself into a situation that will deliver that. And I know it will deliver that, so I take time as much as possible to go up to Ithaca, to the Zen Center where I practice with my teacher, and do an intensive practice, to take it further. I mean, I could go into the details with you of what meditation promises, right? What it really promises, that the teachings talk about, not just Buddha, but Jesus. You know, all the great spiritual masters talked about meditation and what it promises. But I won't go into that with you because it's unbelievable. It's literally unbelievable what meditation can produce in terms of what can allow you to transcend, what it can allow you to enjoy in terms of your experience of being alive, how it can allow you to get into a relationship with your body that's different, how it can allow you to get into a relationship with other human beings that's different. It could literally provide you with the opportunity to realize the possibility of a human life, to realize that what's possible for a human life is happiness, satisfaction, peace of mind, freedom, and effective living. That's available in a human life. But it's not going to happen if what you're using to get that is what's been passed on from previous generations, because what's been passed on from previous generations is insanity. All you have to do is look at the news, right? You know, how far out of the cave are we? We're still killing each other over disagreements, right? How far out of the cave are we? We're so neurotic, you know, that we can't sleep at night, right? We eat all the wrong food. We're killing our physical body, right? We're living in isolation from one another, even though we're physically very close. We're living in isolation from one another, even though we're physically close. We don't know how to relate to other human beings because we're out of a relationship with our own experience of ourselves. How can you relate to other human beings when you're not in a relationship with the own experience of yourself? You're in conflict with yourself. Most people are literally in conflict with themselves. They're in conflict with their thoughts, they're in conflict with their feelings, they're in conflict with their behavior. This is called being unhappy. This is called neuroticism. This is called insanity. So one way to think about meditation is a way to go sane. It's a way to go sane, but it's not free lunch. It requires practice, commitment, diligence, determination, a teacher, a community, and consistency. That's what's on the menu, right? But you can't eat the menu. You have to do the practice to get to the food. You can't eat the menu, okay? So any other questions about meditation? The most important thing I want to get across to you is that meditation is a practice that requires consistently determination and conviction. So you can't dab into it. You can't just play around with this. You can't try it. If you try meditation, you'll fail. You have to understand that if you get involved with the teachings, if you look at the teachings, you will see that the teachings are pointing to realities that are true, that if you don't engage with and you don't follow, your life will be a life of suffering. It's as simple as that. So I've written a couple of books since I've been teaching this class. The last one that I wrote is called Dying to Live. It's on Amazon. It would give you a good background in terms of the teachings, right? Talks a little bit about my own process and my own experience of waking up and teaching meditation. There was another book that I wrote prior to that called Enlightenment Made Easy, right? Because everybody wants everything to be easy, right? So that's another book. Also, since I've been teaching this class, I started to record the talks. In any meditation class, there's a practice and a talk. Why? Because you need to have the fundamental teachings that are the foundation for the practice in order for you to understand why you're doing it and what you're doing, right? So I started to record the talks, and there's almost 500 talks on YouTube now from this class. So during the time that I'm away next week, I expect those of you who come to the class consistently to continue to meditate, right? Continue to listen to the talks. You need to listen to the talks, and you need to understand that this is not the type of thing that you hear one time and it's going to get through. You have to keep listening to the talks, and if you keep listening to the talks, if you listen to the talk that I'm giving today on YouTube, when you listen to it, you'll say, oh, I didn't get that part. I didn't hear that when I heard it the first time, right? Because these teachings have depth to them. And so if you listen to the talks, you'll start to hear things that you didn't hear the first time around, right? So repetitive listening to the talks, repetitive doing the practice so it can sink in, so you can get your brain to wake up, so you can get your brain out of the condition it's in, and you can start to experience what it's like to be awake and alive. If you start to get an experience of what it's like to be awake and alive, you'll be all in with this. You'll be all in with this because you'll realize that what they said wasn't true. You don't need money to be happy. You don't need to find your partner in the world to be happy. You don't need all the things that they tell you need in order to be happy, right? That's just craziness being perpetuated. If you discover that this is the discovery. Through meditation, you can actually discover, if you continue to practice, that you are already happy, satisfied, and peaceful. You just don't know it because you've been busy trying to become what you already are. You've been busy trying to get what you already have. One woman who teaches this wrote a book called A Diamond in Your Pocket. What she meant is you already have everything that's possible for you to experience as a human being that would be fulfilling. You already have it, right? But you've been busy chasing it by thinking about it and thinking it's out there in the world. And therefore, we have something like the pursuit of happiness, right? You're guaranteed to try and get happy. You're guaranteed to try and get happy. Well, what's that saying? It must be saying that you're not happy. What if you are happy, but you don't know you're happy because you're using thinking and acting and trying to get what you want from the world to experience being happy? And what if that's not what happiness really is? What if happiness is the actual experience of being satisfied, peaceful, and fulfilled just because you exist? That's natural happiness. That's the natural state. And if you have that, if you're already happy, peaceful, and satisfied, then you live your life. Can you see that's going to be a different life? Yeah, because you won't be expecting your husband or your wife to make you happy. You won't be expecting your money to make you happy. You won't be expecting your kids or your parents to make you happy. You're already happy, right? And then you can relate to them in a way where you're sharing the experience of being alive together instead of using the relationship to try and get all your selfish, petty needs met.